Well, hello everyone, and we'd like to welcome you back to the city of Prague, and we're taking a look at the National Theater here. Betty, isn't it exciting to be here again?
Yeah. I don't think you could come back here again and again and again and never be tired of it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful city, absolutely beautiful. And we're going to learn a little bit more about the history, and we are going into the Old Town, as of course we have promised you on the last couple of shows. I didn't realize that we had so much of the area to really show, you know.
Well, that's one thing about you, Marv. You milk it for all it's worth. We do. I mean, you have so much taping, so much that you do,
there's
and
so
it's
much
very hard to edit, to leave out the things.
Well, we do leave a lot out, but we want to share as much as we can with our viewers, because some people, of course, never do get a chance to travel.
No.
So anyway, let's listen now and listen very carefully to our guide as she gives us a little more history about Prague.
So, from the beginning of the Czech state, actually dating back to 10th century, the Czech family ruled in our country, Přemyslites. They ruled until the beginning of 14th century, when they died out. The last lady of the Přemysl family, Elizabeth, got married to Luxembourg king, John of Luxembourg, and their son, he was already mentioned, Charles IV. By the way, now if you look to the left, you see a beautiful building, the green one. It was built in Art Nouveau style or modern style. There are plenty of the buildings here in Prague built in Art Nouveau. You should definitely reflect. Well, now on the right hand side you see another such a palace. It's such a center of the culture. It is situated on the island. This island is called Slavic Island or Slavonic Island, and we call the building the Palace of Queen Sofia. Now in front of us you see the house. The grey one, the modern one. I mentioned that it's the most famous modern house of Prague. It is called the dancing house because if you look at the house, it reminds the man and the lady dancing. The glass building, the glass part of the building looks like the dress or the skirt of the dancing lady. Therefore, it is called dancing house. People call him Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire dancing. This dancing house was awarded the prize, the design of the year 1996 by the US magazine Time. Its architects are from United States. One is from United States. He's living in California. His name is Frank Gehry. And another architect is from Europe. He's living here in Prague. His name is Milunic.
Well, don't you just love the dancing building?
Absolutely not. I
You
can't
don't like it?
imagine what they were thinking of to give that an award. I mean, it looks like they just threw it up against there.
Yeah, and it was done by an American architect.
Luxembourgs ruled in our country, called after John of Luxembourg, the father of Charles IV. And during the time of Luxembourgs, the Hussite wars happened in our country. So it was in the middle of 15th century. After the Hussite wars, we had one more Czech king. He was already mentioned, the only elected king in our country, George of Poděbrady. He was the only one in our history who was Protestant. Then George of Poděbrady was replaced by two Polish kings. And then when the second Polish king died in the battle against the Turks in Hungary, the Czech nobility elected the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs ruled in here from 1526 until 1918. It means the end of World War I. After World War I was over, Czechoslovakia, the republic, has been founded. We got the presidents in that time. The first president of our country was Thomas Masaryk. His wife was American, Alice Garrick. So after 1918, Czechoslovakia, we call it First Republic, was very prosperous. According to the industrial output, standard of living, Czechoslovakia between First and Second World War was on the 6th place in the world. So actually we belong to the most advanced countries in the world. For instance, the first belt production, conveyor production in Europe.
I didn't realize, Betty, that the Slovak Republic had such a history. I mean, before it was Czechoslovakia, and then now, of course, Slovak Republic. But and she mentioned, of course, so many times the Habsburgs. Boy, that family was all over the place, weren't they?
They were. They really, and they were very prolific, but not only in their production of people, but in the places that they moved to and sort of took over in intermarriages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, when she talked about the monastery just a little bit ago, there are still 40 monks that live there in that monastery.
Oh, the one that we're going to come.
Oh,
up
we
to
haven't
here?
seen
no,
that
we haven't
yet.
seen that yet. No,
Oh,
they're coming up
I'm
there, yeah.
sorry, but
That's okay.
I'm projecting ahead.
That's all right.
Because,
But it's right around this hill. That's probably why we're going to the highest area here in Prague, and there's a big monument up here, and on our left-hand side there's a huge sports stadium that's there too. But then as we head kind of down a little bit, because we're going to go to see the palaces and the royal castle, and you're right, there is a monastery there. Yeah.
Marv, what was that big monument? What's that monument there? I don't remember that. I don't know how you could forget it, but I don't remember who it was dedicated to.
I don't know.
Do
All
you
I
know?
know, it was big.
Well, so here we are on the Strahov Hill. Still, on the right-hand side, you will see the entrance into the monastery. You could see the building of the monastery from the Charles Bridge. I mentioned that it's the third oldest monastery in Prague. It was such a big, wide building with 2 towers. So that monastery is just on the right-hand side. It belongs to a very strange order. This monastery was founded in 1142. The first type of the monastery of that order was founded in France, in northern France, in the French city Prémontré. So on the right-hand side, that's the entry to the monastery. And the city, the French city, gave the name to the order Prémontré, Premonstrations. So that's active monastery again. About 40 monks are living there. Now that's already such a suburb of the castle here. On the left-hand side, you see the monument of 2 astronomers. Those 2 astronomers have been living here in Prague in 16th century. Nowadays, the seat of the president, the seat and the office of the president. I think his name sounds familiar to you because he visited the United States already many times. Václav Havel. So now the castle is the seat of the president since 1918. Before it was the seat of the princes and then the kings. Before we reach the castle, we will cross the moat.
Oh my God.
And this rounded tower, that's the part of the castle.
Well, we cross over the moat here, and the moat is dry.
The moat is dry.
The moat is dry.
Sad
see,
story.
It didn't look like there was anything there. So, except this complex that we're going into is very, very impressive. I mean, we'll be going into the church or the cathedral a little bit later on. But first of all, we have to pass through some of these gates and these guards.
And that's not security. Like we're used to going through security.
Yeah.
They don't bother you. They just stand there and look at you.
Not at all. You know who designed these costumes for the guards?
No, you tell
the
me.
costume designer for the film Amadeus. In fact, some of the film was shot in one of the bishop's mansions or houses or palaces, whatever they call it there, and we'll see that in just a little bit. Some of the movie was done there, but anyway, the guard uniforms were done by a costumer from the motion picture.
Well, they look like costumes. Well, they are costumes actually. Sure. They're not uniforms, of course, but they're very effective.
And they have very, very young guards. We'll learn a little bit about that later on too. But anyway, we passed from one courtyard into another and into another. It's complex. I really thought it was quite. It was complex, but it was very, very beautiful at the same time.
Front of the gate to the main gate to the castle, we will see the castle from its youngest part to the oldest part. The first courtyard, what we are seeing next, it is the youngest one. It was built during the reign of Maria Theresa. You have probably heard about Maria Theresa in Vienna. She ruled from 1740 to 1780. She lived in Vienna, but she had a big influence on the architecture of the castle. She built the first courtyard of the castle and she rebuilt the rest of the castle in the neoclassical style. So we will see the main gate to the castle built by her and also the first courtyard. In front of the castle there is the square. It is called the same as the castle, Hradčany Square. This square was destroyed after the fire, by the fire. which broke out from the lesser town in 1541. So as well as in the lesser town, all these palaces on the square were built after the fire, mostly in 17th century. Those palaces were built by noble families. Therefore, they hold the names of the noble families. Over there, the most beautiful palace on the square is over there with the paintings. They are frescoes.
Must have been quite some nobility that lived here. I mean, right around the palace.
Well, it looked like they lived very well.
Oh, I think they did. Yeah, and remember, she said that it all burned down in, 1541.
You know, it's always so puzzling when you look at these buildings and they're concrete or they're brick or they're stone or something. And then you hear they all burned down and you say to yourself, how in the heck did they burn down?
Well, I think what happens, the fire gets in there, and usually the roofs are made of wood, and probably that gives way, everything burns up inside, and then it has weakened all the structure, so it just probably falls in on itself.
And then they reuse the bricks when they rebuild it, I guess. So
Could
that,
be.
Huh?
Could be.
But doesn't it seem incongruous, really, when you have a brick or a cement-type building and you know that it burns?
Well, look in England, what happened, with Queen Elizabeth. I mean, one of the palaces there burned. We went through that too after they were fixing that back up again too.
Yeah.
But it did a lot of structural damage to that.
Was it structural? I always think about it as being maybe internal, doing something with the curtains and the rugs
Oh, it
and
did
the
that too,
furniture
yeah.
and stuff.
The building we just saw there, we just took a quick pan of there. That was the Archbishop. There is a cardinal that lives there now, and that's where part of the film Amadeus was done, inside that.
Of the movie Amadeus, because he's living here in Prague. By the way, so those boys, the guards of the castle, they are joining compulsory military service. It is here in our country for 1 year for the boys. When they leave the high school, if they go to university, they can postpone the military service after university. Then it is 9 months. And if they want to avoid the military service, it is possible as well. But then they must work 1.5 years for the social welfare. So now we will walk through the castle.
Well, as our viewers can see, it was a very nice warm day. The day that we toured.
It was beautiful.
This.
You can tell by the
nice?
clothing
Yeah.
on the people. I'm really surprised at how they dress, because going into a church there should be more respect, I believe, anyway. And I believe we should go get that Amadeus film and run it again and say, oh, I was there, I saw it, I know exactly.
Good idea,
Yeah.
good idea. Well, we had to go through some more courtyards before we go into this church. There's a covered well right there. Can you imagine the old days? They were, pulling the water out of there.
Pulling the water out, yeah.
And there's the entrance where the president's offices are. We can see there, a little more modern. So now let's go into the church, shall we?
Well, so we can go inside the church of Saint Vitus, and I will give you the explanation about the church inside, okay? On the grave of the first bishop of our country, Saint Adalbert, the Pope John Paul II visited Prague 3 times already. His first visit to Prague was in 1989 when he canonized Blessed Agnes over there. Just maybe we can go here. Yeah, the cathedral. This part of the cathedral is historical one. It was built in 14th and 15th century by Charles IV and his father, John of Luxembourg. So it is Gothic style. Unfortunately, the cathedral wasn't finished, and therefore they started to finish that part much later on, from 1870 until 1929. So you see, this part is New Gothic. It was finished in our century. This part in 14th and 15th century Gothic. This part in 19th and 20th century New Gothic. The cathedral was exactly finished in 1929 because it was 1,000 years anniversary of the main patron saint of our country, good King Wenceslaus. Over there you see his statue again, the statue with the banner. By the way, those statues around, they are patron saints of our country. Well, good King this cathedral is called Saint Vitus because Good King Wenceslaus founded the first church on this place. It was the chapel, or the rotonda, it's such a rounded chapel of Saint Vitus, because good King Wenceslaus got the relics of Saint Vitus, the arm of Saint Vitus. So in 929 he founded the rotonda of Saint Vitus, and later on in the same year he was killed. So in 1929 we celebrated 1,000 years anniversary, the foundation of the first rotonda and the death of good King Wenceslaus. That new Gothic part is famous because of beautiful stained glass windows. You could see them around. We will see them again on the way back. So those stained glass windows have been made in 30s of our century after the designs of the Czech painters. The biggest stained glass windows are over there, that one and this one. That one depicts the Genesis, and this one, the Last Judgment. Just below the window, symbolizing the Last Judgment, you find the coat of arms of the city. It is written there, Prague, the mother of the cities. Opposite, so that's the transept, the original gate to the cathedral was from there. It is so-called Golden Gate. Opposite, you see the choir with two organs. This choir was originally standing here, closing the cathedral until the last century. In the last century, when the cathedral was extended, when it was finished, the choir was moved from here to the northern part of the cathedral. I mentioned that John Paul II visited Prague 3 times. His first visit here was still during the communists in 1989 when he canonized Blessed Agnes over there. So nowadays St. Agnes, we have seen the monastery from the bus, which he founded, remember. Then the last visit of the Pope was here in the last year. We've been standing on the grave of St. Adalbert, who was the first bishop in our country in 973. He was also killed by the pagans in 997, so in the last year it was 1,000 years anniversary of his death. This cathedral is still in use. There are services in here every day. On Sundays mornings, there are 3 services in here, and during the services the sightseeing of the cathedral is prohibited. In this cathedral, Czech kings have been crowned, and they are also buried in here. Therefore, crown jewels are kept here. I will show you then where. And also, Czech kings are buried here, as I mentioned. For instance, here, that white tombstone, that's the tombstone of the first Habsburg king who ruled in here, Ferdinand I. So now let's go around the church.
Betty, in this one piece that we're going to see here next, there are 6 tons of silver in that. Can you imagine that?
No.
6 tons.
Things. And on the left-hand side, on the edge, there is the painting, the portrait above. There is the statue of good King Wenceslaus and the here in 15th century and his wife. So in the middle you can see the tombstone of good King Wenceslaus. Just opposite, on the other side of the chapel, there is the door. On the land, they must collect all 7 pieces. These, our crown jewels look like that. You see that they are very big pieces, are on the permanent displays. Those exact replicas have been made in 1967 for Expo in Montreal, in Canada.
So in that Wenceslaus chapel, that little door there led back to the crown jewels, and there are 7 locks and 7 keys distributed to various people around the city to get in there. But what she showed us, I guess, for that for the exposition, those were the phony jewels.
Yeah, but isn't that awful to hide them? I mean, you go in to see the Queen's jewels in England.
That's true.
The tower, that's the highest church tower in Prague. It's 300 feet high. From the tower, including the tower to the right, that's the Gothic part. You see the gate into the St. Vitus Cathedral, which is now under the restoration. So it is the Golden Gate, the original gate to the cathedral. And on the gate you see small window. Actually there are 2 windows, but the second one is not very well seen. So these are the windows of the room in which, in which crown jewels are kept. There is a scaffolding now because the beautiful mosaic is being restored. That's the mosaic which symbolizes the Last Judgment. It was made in 14th century of Venetian glass. By the way, it's restored by the Institute from Los Angeles. Then in front of the cathedral you see the statue of St. George killing the dragon, also made in 14th century. And here on the left you see the granite obelisk. It is one piece of granite. It was originally higher, but unfortunately when it was erected in 1928, exactly 10 years anniversary of Czechoslovakia, it fell down, it fell over, and the top was broken. So the broken top was later on replaced by the golden top.
Where's George?
George is over there, just in front of us.
Down below.
Yeah?
Oh.
Down below.
Well, if you ever want to look at gargoyles, here they are. And now I know why they have those things. Those were spouts, water spouts. See, all those gargoyles, look in the mouth, see, the water shot
That's
out
where
from
we
there.
get the word gargle when we have a sore
Gargle
throat
from
and
gargoyle?
we gargle, gargoyle.
Hey, I never thought about that.
In front of us, there is the Basilica of St. George, the oldest preserved church in our country. It was founded in 921 by the father of good King Wenceslaus, Bratislav. You see his statue over there. You see the Duke holding the building. That building is the Basilica of St. George. And over there, the yellow part, where the posters are, it used to be the first nunnery in our country. Actually, the first convent in here. It was founded in 973, in the same year when the bishopric was founded here. Side of the fortification wall, there are those beautiful tiny houses. Those houses in the wall were built in the end of 16th century for the soldiers who protected the castle. Later on, soldiers have been replaced by the craftsmen. And as most of them were the goldsmiths, the street started to be called Golden Lane, Golden Street. There is another explanation that the alchemists who tried to produce gold used to live in these houses. Of course, they were just the cheaters, richly supported by the king to find out the gold production, as they thought, and they were doing nothing but just drinking plum brandy, as they are thought. Nowadays, the houses have been converted into the shops. So, for instance, the handicraft shop, tin soldiers or something like that. So if you want, we will walk slowly down the street. You just go in the shop, in the houses, to look how the houses look like.
Well, the building that we're taking a look at right now is a synagogue. And we're in the Old City again here, and this is in the Jewish quarter. And as you can see, this synagogue was really, really quite old. There was also a cemetery located off to the side and to the back of this particular area. And there were still a lot of buildings that were here that have been here for such a long time. In fact, there was a restaurant there, and went over and had some kosher food for lunch. It was very good. It was very good. And you can see here some of the rest of the buildings, and of course there's a Star of David up on top of the synagogue that you see right here.
These are the areas that I get most pleasure out of. I like to see history and as it was, and then we have a comparison of history the way it is today. But the architecture, and I think it all looks so romantic, all these beautiful buildings, but I would imagine they wouldn't be very comfortable to live in.
Probably not. There was also a museum here of the Jewish history of Prague there, and that was quite interesting as well. But Betty, what gets me is, look at this. I mean, now it looks like fairy tale time, doesn't it, huh?
Oh,
hey,
look
listen, yeah.
That adds to it.
Okay, let's listen for a moment.
edition.
Well, I certainly hate to say goodbye to this city because it was just enchanting, very picturesque, and a great place to go to. Didn't you think so?
Oh, yes, of course I did.
And we've got to go back again. Well, Betty, you know, this whole series that we did on Eastern Europe was just really lots of fun. It was I think one of our greatest trips.
It was
we
a
saw
highlight,
so
wasn't it?
much, you know.
And I loved what we saw, the history, and I fell in love with the Polish people because their loyalty, their fight for their religion. I was so impressed with them. And then to be in the area where Pope John Paul had his church and his ministry.
There's so much. I really agree with you. I think it was one of the greatest trips that we had, and it was just lots and lots of fun. And it was great to be there at the time when things were changing. Well, that's it for this time. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.